Hey everybody, it's great to see you today. Welcome to Living Power, your online Bible study where we're walking through the Bible in a year. Today is September 12th and we are in the book of Zechariah yet again. I hope you are enjoying these minor prophets as you never have before, and I hope that you're seeing things in them that just speak of, it was all prophecy at the time that they were written, but for some of it, for us, it's past events, and for some of it, it's future events. So I am thoroughly enjoying it. I hope you are as well. Today, we look at the time period that occurs after the return from the exile. So people are coming home to Israel. They're rebuilding. They have a lot of work to do. Not only do they have to get their own houses in order, but they have to rebuild the temple. And then there's the issue of the city and the city walls. Everything, has to be repaired and fixed. They've been in exile for over 70 years, or for 70 years just about. And today, in the reading, 16 years have passed since they came home. And we know that King Cyrus issued the decree that they were allowed to come back home, and certainly God is working in his heart to allow them to come home, and he freed all the captives to come home. Today we read about a particular event that happens that we can apply to our life today. I can totally sympathize with these people who were so intent on rebuilding the temple, but yet they had these people over here that were just opposing them and telling them they shouldn't be doing it and just trying to get in their way. And can't you relate to that? Can't you think of a time in your life where you have just been under intense opposition and you really felt like you were doing the right thing, and you maybe even cried out to God, God, why in the world is this so hard? It's harder than it has to be. And so much of our life it seems that it's harder than it has to be. Well, in the reading today, we see conviction, and we see a message from the Lord that says, yes, it is time to rebuild. Don't worry about the opposition. Keep doing what it is that I've told you to do. And so that's certainly a wonderful reminder, an encouragement for us to keep going. If God has told you to do something, certainly do it regardless of the opposition that you are encountering. Now, here's the situation. Darius is on the Persian throne at this time. Haggai and Zechariah are both contemporary priests. They're living at the same time, and they're both talking about the message that they've received from the Lord, that the people need to begin to rebuild the temple. And there are these people that are opposing them, and they're kind of like, well, do you think it's the right time? I'm not so sure. Maybe it's not the right time to do that. There's a sense of apathy. Inertia has set in. There's certainly a sense of a lack of urgency going on. And can't you just relate in church committee meetings? A lot of times it's like, well, I'm not sure if we want to start that now. And even in business, you'll have people on a committee or in a boardroom. Well, the naysayers. I'm not sure that it's the right time. Let's put that off. Well, in Ecclesiastes it says there's a season for this, and there's a season for this, and there's a time for this, and there's a time for that. We have to, through discernment, understand when it's time to build and replant and grow, and when it's time to wait. In this situation, God, through his prophets, is saying it's time to build. Let's get going. And so the people that are opposing send a note back to the king of Persia, and evidently in Persia, they kept copious documents detailing everything that was happening. And so these notes must have been, almost 20 years old, and they go back and they look in the archives, and they would have gone probably down way beneath the palace and looked for the scroll in the library, and they would have opened up the scroll, and they would have seen that, yes, the king Cyrus did decree that they were to come back, build the temple, and oh, by the way, we're supposed to pay for it. Can you imagine what the opposition thought when they heard that? So Darius, the king, sends a note back, don't oppose the work, I'll pay all the taxes, give them offerings for sacrifice, and may they offer one up to their God for me and my family. How about that? I loved that part. The Jews must have been ecstatic. I mean, this was really, really good news for them. They must have just been thrilled. So in Zechariah 7 and 8, we read about the Jews coming to Zechariah with the question, should we, now that we're home, continue fasting? Now, you have to understand the background of the fasting to understand why they would ask this question. I mean, this is a very practical, reasonable question. Should we continue to do this? God tells them the answer 4 messages later. I love that. I mean, they expected a straight answer. Just tell me in the first message. But God says, no, I got 3 other things to tell you first. And then the fourth message, I'll tell you. Did you notice that? The first thing God says to them is, I want to remind you of something. I want to remind you that your heart was not with me, for me, every time you fasted. So fasting is a spiritual discipline. It's supposed to be to pull us closer into communion with the Lord. And God is like, well, did you really do it for me? Or did you do it for some other reason? It's a good question. Message number 2, God says, I want to give you a reminder that you need to help the poor, the widows, the orphans, and don't scheme against each other. I love that reminder. Don't scheme against each other. And then third in the message, he says, I love Jerusalem. God loves this city. He loves this place. I love Jerusalem and I will return. He gives us a message of consolation before he answers our question. Now that is a sweet and merciful and compassionate God that we have. And in the 4th message, he finally answers their question. Your fasts will turn into joyful festivals, feasts, like Thanksgiving every single day. That's how it would be. That is really something. Now here's the background on the fast that will help you to understand this. There are certain fasts that are prescribed in the law in Leviticus 23. However, during the exile, they had imposed and started to observe corporately additional fasts that were not notated in Leviticus. They had put these burdens on themselves. In the 7th month, they had another fast to commemorate the murder of Gedaliah, the governor of Judah, by Ishmael, right before Jerusalem was taken to Egypt. Now, we talked about this guy only once in a video, and do you remember right before who was it? Oh, Jeremiah got mixed in with those people and got taken down to Egypt. Ishmael rose up and killed the governor of Judah, and the people were like, oh no, now Babylon's really going to be upset with us. Well, the fast was all about this, commemorating the murder of this guy. In the 10th month, they had another fast that was not prescribed in the law, and this was to remember the 3-year siege of Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar. There was another fast in the 4th month to remember Nebuchadnezzar taking Jerusalem and breaking through the wall. So the moment that the city actually fell and the exile started, they had a fast to commemorate and to remember that. So these were all self-imposed fasts. Some Jews still do them today, is what I understand. But God is saying, I'm going to turn your fasting into feasting. And what is he talking about? He's talking about the millennial period. He's talking about the millennial period. And in Zechariah 8, verse 18 to 23, you'll want to mark this. These scriptures, these verses relate to the millennial period. And there is some very, very, very interesting things that just blow me away when I read this. Let's look at this really quick. During the millennial period, you wonder, what if you and I are living here during the millennial period? What will our life be like? Well, we're going to participate in festivals of joy and celebration. Sounds good, doesn't it? Well, then in verse 20 it says, people from nations and cities around the world will travel to Jerusalem. That's you and me. The people of one city will say to another, come, let's go to Jerusalem and ask the Lord to bless us. Can you imagine what that will be like to just say to your buddies, let's go to Jerusalem and go see Jesus and ask him for a blessing? We'll be able to do that. That is amazing to me. Let's worship the Lord of heaven's armies. That's Jerusalem. Jesus, I'm determined to go. I've said that twice. I'm determined to go. I've gone twice, and goodness, I'm going to go again. I'm going to take my son. If the Lord is willing, we are determined to go again as a family. Then it says in verse 22, many people and powerful nations will come to Jerusalem to seek the Lord and ask for his blessing. In those days, verse 23, 10 men from different nations and languages of the world will clutch at the sleeve of one Jew, and they will say, please, let us walk with you, for we have heard that God is with you. Do you see what will happen to the people of Israel, to the Jews? Now they are going to receive such honor during the millennial period that people all over, all of the nations will be proud to call themselves a friend to a Jewish person. And God is just going to do this miraculous thing and raise his people up to a status of prominence and honor in the millennial period. And now all this, certainly they have this to look forward to, but we do as well. And it will just be an amazing, amazing time. So that concludes the lesson today. Tomorrow we're going to continue in prophecy. We're going to continue talking about Armageddon. We're going to learn a little bit more about that tomorrow, the end times. You'll continue to need your notebook if you're taking notes, and it'll be another great lesson, hopefully. So thank you for being with me today. It's been my pleasure to lead you in Bible study. Blessings to you and your family. Shalom.